So let's open the meeting and call to order this meeting of the Laramie City Council for December 6th, 2022. And for those who would like to, please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance, however best you can. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. City Clerk, may I have a roll call of members?
Humby. Here. Gabriel. Absent. Harrington.
Here.
O'Doherty. Here. Schmeckel.
Here.
Schuster.
Here.
Somerville.
Here.
Pierce.
Here.
Weaver.
Here.
That's 8 present and 1 absent, Your Honor.
Thank you very much.
Brian, Councilor Schuster, Pat Gabriel's announcing the men's basketball game tonight, so I don't expect to see him come in at all on this because he does both men's and women's now, announces in the arena.
I'm sure he's glad to be doing that again, but he did send a message to that effect, Councilmember Schuster, yes. Hopefully that's not always on Tuesday night, but
yeah,
I guess we'll see what happens.
I picked on him last night. I got to bring some humor into this because he said, "Welcome the Cowboys," and it was a Cowgirls game last night, and he did it 3 times. So I actually texted him during the middle of the game to get him to correct himself. It was hilarious.
Well, if he keeps that up, maybe he'll be available for Tuesday night again. All right, let's go to public comment on non-agenda items, please. Besides Councilmember Schuster's, although that was appropriate. Public comment on non-agenda items. Of course, we have some public hearings and the usual public comment periods available for agenda items. I know we have some folks in attendance. I just want to make that clear, if it wasn't already. Okay, seeing no comment on council member, seeing no comment on non-agenda items, we'll go ahead and move into item number 5 for considerations to the agenda of changes to the agenda. Vice Mayor.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I move that the following change to the agenda occur. It's on item number 18. In addition to an executive session for personnel, we are adding another topic, confidential bylaws, Wyoming statute 16.4.405, lowercase a, Roman numeral 9. Second.
Motion and a second from Councilmember Cumby. All those in favor, say aye or indicate on the screen.
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Okay, that motion carries. Vice Mayor Pierce?
Yeah, thanks. I move that the agenda be set as changed.
Councilmember, same sign as before. Oh, second from Councilmember Schmeckel, I believe. Yep. Okay, Councilmember, same sign as before.
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you very much. Thank you, Vice Mayor Pierce. All right, that takes us to item number 6. And we have a proclamation, United Way of Albany County. Good proclamation, timed around holidays. I will read this proclamation. Whereas United Way of Albany County works to galvanize the caring capacity of our community by helping people invest in local solutions, bringing people together through charitable giving, volunteerism, and public policy advocacy to make life better for our neighbors. And whereas services provided by United Way of Albany County's 16 community partners help to tackle some of our community's greatest challenges, including issues such as health, education, and financial stability. And whereas it is crucial to recognize and support local nonprofit organizations to highlight how in 2021 They have made a positive impact in the lives of 12,197 community members. And whereas complex problems cannot be solved without those who dedicate their time, resources, and skills to these causes, and whereas together we can build a stronger community and a better future for our children. Now, therefore, I, Paul Weaver, Mayor and President of the Laramie City Council, do hereby proclaim that United Way of Albany County's annual campaign be recognized and celebrated during the month of December. And I encourage all City of Laramie residents to look for ways to make a difference in our community. And do we have some guests joining us to share a comment or two or some information regarding this campaign? City Clerk, I see we have Evelyn Edson. Would like to say welcome and thank you for joining us. And if you have some comments for the council, now would be a great time.
Thank you. Thank you so much for this proclamation, and we greatly appreciate the support. United Way this fall is working to raise $545,000 in support of all of our local nonprofits, and it takes every single one of us. And each one of these nonprofits relies upon each other, and United Way is here to make sure that they're strong. And so we really, really appreciate the support, and I know the nonprofits appreciate the support as well. And if anyone wants to learn more about United Way, they can visit our website at unitedwayalbanycounty.org. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much. We are happy to do a small part here with the reading of the proclamation and to try to expand a little bit of awareness about the campaign. United Way has been a partner of the City of Laramie for a long time, and we're really happy to do whatever we can to support the work that you do that kind of ripples out and supports so many other nonprofits. So thank you very much for being here tonight and talking to us about the program. Council members, that's going to take us to a proclamation that I'm going to turn over to Councilmember Schuster if he's prepared and ready, because this is a program that he has some involvement with. Isn't that correct, Councilmember Schuster?
Yes, that's correct.
If you would, please, sir, read the proclamation for us.
Okay, the proclamation is Wreaths Across America. Excuse me. Whereas Wreaths Across America is a national day, it will take place on the third Saturday in the month of December. And whereas Wreaths Across America was established as a nonprofit in 2007, unanimously voted by the U.S. Congress in 2008 as a national day. And whereas Wreaths Across America mission is to remember the fallen, honor those who serve, and teach the next generation about the cost of freedom. And whereas Wreaths Across America is comprised of over 60,000 volunteers placing over 700,000 wreaths on veterans' graves in over 1,000 locations in every state, Puerto Rico, and 24 overseas countries. And whereas the nonprofit Wreaths Across America donates $5 back on every wreath placed on a nonprofit organization within each local region. Now therefore be it resolved that I, Brian Schuster, speaking on behalf of Mayor Paul Weaver and the governing body of the City of Laramie, do hereby proclaim December 13th, 2022 as Wreaths Across America in the City of Laramie and call upon the citizens in this special observance. And I've got to go to the next page, apologize. And that it'll be signed in witness thereof. I have hereunto set my hand to cause to be affixed the seal of the City of Laramie this 6th day of December 2022. And I'd like to thank the council for allowing me to do this. And I am the one speaking on behalf of it. This is a general overview. Wreaths Across America was started as a company that was making wreaths, had some extras, so they contacted Arlington National Cemetery to see if they could place their wreaths there, and they were granted that, and it kind of grew as in that. I said it's the third Saturday. Depending on when Christmas is located, it could be on the second or the third Saturday. Wreaths Across America will take place on the third Saturday here at the cemetery. We will have some speakers on it. I will pick up this proclamation and I will deliver it. Hopefully it's all signed and ready to go this Sunday to the VFW to their volunteer breakfast. So if anybody has any questions on this, please have them get in touch with me and I'll get back in touch with them. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Schuster, and I will make sure it's ready for you by Sunday for the VFW. I know the city clerk will help me with that, like she always does. Thank you very much, Councilmember Schuster, for talking to us about this program and what we're doing for it locally and a little bit about the history of it. We do appreciate it. Council, that takes us to the public hearing, the first of 3 public hearings this evening, and I'll ask the city clerk to please read the notice for us.
Notice is hereby given that on the 14th day of November 2022, an application was received in the office of the city clerk for a new restaurant liquor license number R71 for Pamela J. Delgado Garcia, doing business as Garcia's Mexican Restaurant at 111 East Grand Avenue, Laramie, Wyoming. Public hearing to hear comments or protests relative to this license application will be held Tuesday, December 6, 2022 at 6:30 p.m. in council chambers of City Hall. Action on this application will be considered at the regular meeting of City Council on Tuesday, December 6, 2022 at 6:30 p.m. via Zoom. All information relative to this matter is available for review at the City of Laramie City Clerk's office at 406 Ivinson Avenue, Laramie, Wyoming. Anyone wishing to be heard should be present or may be represented by his or her agent at the meeting.
Thank you. You've heard the notice, and we'll see if there's any public comment for this public hearing on the subject outlined by the city clerk. Yes, we have someone that would like to speak. I've got Angelica Garcia Wagner, please. Talk to the council.
Oh, hi. Can you hear me?
Loud and clear. Yes, thanks for being.
Okay, no, so my mom is actually Pamela Garcia. She's on here with me, so.
Oh, great, yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, hello, council members. Thank you for having me. Nancy explained, as a new applicant, you prefer that I be present, and I'm open to any questions you may have for me.
Well, thank you very much. You know, we like people to be at the meeting where the licenses or the transfers are approved. It's not so much because we're looking forward to an opportunity to grill you with questions. I think what you're going to hear from the council is that we support your new business effort. We hope it goes really well. We're glad that you've seen fit to explore an opportunity for this business in Laramie and in this location, which is visible and part of our downtown. So we're just really pleased. I don't think we have a bunch of hard to ask questions for you. We want to thank you for being here, though, and making yourself available for that. And we appreciate the time that you've spent doing that. But I don't think the council necessarily has a ton of questions. We may have some when it comes up later on in the agenda, but I'm going to use my crystal ball, which is pretty faulty, but sometimes it works, to say I don't think we'll have a ton of questions at that time, but we will possibly have some when it comes up on the regular agenda. Go ahead.
Well, thank you.
Okay. Yeah.
I'm happy to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, you're really welcome. Okay. Any other comments on the public hearing? Council, over the years, and I'm sure you've noticed this too, one thing I've noticed that is a little bit disorienting for public comment is when we have a public hearing and then we have the regular agenda item and folks don't know what the appropriate time to speak is. I don't know what the appropriate time for people to speak is on that situation where we have the 2 times. But we always appreciate people taking time out of their evenings to be with us. I don't see, City Clerk, I don't see any other requests for the public hearing on this item. So I think we'll close the public hearing, and I'd ask you to please read the notice for the second public hearing tonight.
Notice is hereby given that a public hearing of the Laramie City Council will be held Tuesday, December 6, 2022 at 6:30 p.m. via Zoom webinar for the following purpose. Original ordinance number 2053, amending Laramie Municipal Code Section 8.80, definitions and enforcement procedures of the Laramie Rental Housing Code. All information relative to this matter is available for review at the City of Laramie City Clerk's office at 406 Ivinson Avenue, Laramie, Wyoming. Anyone wishing to be heard should be present or may be represented by his or her agent at the meeting.
Thank you very much. And why don't we see if for this item, we have public comment.
Mayor, we did receive a request from Tom Matamore today to provide public comment during this public hearing.
On this item?
Yes, sir.
Oh, pardon me. I thought that was the next item. Very good. Let's
Oh,
have Mr.
you're right. No, you're absolutely right, Mayor. I'm sorry.
Oh, okay. Well, at least once before my term is up, I had something on the agenda speaking list straight and the city clerk didn't. I want the council to please take note of that. I'm teasing the city clerk. Do we have any public comment on this? It appears we do. I'd like to go ahead and let Mr. Glass, we've got Brett Glass. Let's let Mr. Glass in to address the council during the public hearing. Mr. Glass, you've got the floor.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of council. Thank you for the opportunity to comment. Well, this ordinance consists of amendments to an ordinance, which was a bad one to begin with. And the changes that you see here are extremely sloppy. They don't answer the concerns that were raised by the judge, and it makes some of them worse. Let me go through what some of them are. The first thing is there's an amended definition of what a violation is. And what it does is it says that a violation means a known or suspected violation. In other words, a suspected violation is defined as a violation. This not only doesn't make sense just from a linguistic point of view, it essentially it presumes people to be guilty before anything's been investigated. It violates due process, and it attempts to give the city manager or the city manager's designee arbitrary authority to be judge, jury, and executioner, to declare that a suspected violation is a violation without this being examined by any third party. The second thing that it does, and this is something that the judge pointed out when she voided the ordinance before, is that it takes disputes over provisions of a civil contract, such as things such as appliances that are provided, and turns the possible violation of a civil contract into a crime, literally into a criminal matter. And it only does this for violations of the contract by or suspected violations of the contract by the landlord, not by the tenant. And again, the city manager or the city manager's designee judges whether to turn these disputes into crimes. This violates among other things, the Equal Protection Clause of the Wyoming Constitution, because only violations by the landlord are criminalized. And again, it blurs the distinction between civil and criminal matters, which is one of the reasons that the ordinance was voided. Now, the amended ordinance also would cite as authority for all of this a provision of the law that talks about public health. Well, not all of the provisions of the ordinance have to do with public health, and so there still isn't authority for many of the things in the ordinance. It doesn't. The statutes don't authorize mandatory registration of rentals or licensing of them or fees, which constitute an illegal tax. And the licensing provisions are preempted by state real estate law, which says that especially if you hold a real estate license, you're entitled to rent things. But also if you're the owner of a property, you're entitled to rent it. The provisions also violate the Supreme Court case, the Green River case, which said that cities can't just go ahead and expand upon existing state law. The ordinance also still exempts certain landlords. It cherry picks certain ones that are just exempt from it. And this also violates equal protection. And so this is another problem with the ordinance that this doesn't address. And finally, the ordinance as it stands is already causing properties to be withdrawn from the market. People are coming to us and asking us if we have available rentals when there was a surplus before. So already this ordinance, even before you're fully enforcing it, is already causing properties to withdraw, raising rents, creating scarcity. This is the opposite of the policy that City Council said it wanted to establish. It wanted housing to be more available and affordable. So for all of these reasons, I'd like to ask that you vote this down and really reconsider your approach, because this is not going to improve things. It's going to expose the city to more lawsuits. It's going to make a worse environment for rentals in Laramie. And in general, it's just not fair, and it's very sloppily done. So again, I'd like to ask you to please vote this down right here on second reading. Thank you very much.
Thank you for sharing your perspective with the council. Public comment is open for this public hearing item. I'm going to recognize, oh, I had a hand up and then disappeared. Did you see that as well, City Clerk? All right.
Mayor, I went ahead and let Michael Cisneros in, and that was the hand we saw.
Oh, is Mr. Cisneros in here with us? I just didn't see him on the, yeah. Mr. Cisneros, thanks for being here. Go ahead. You've got the floor.
Sure. Can you hear me fine?
Yeah.
Thank you for allowing me to speak, Mayor and council members. I appreciate the opportunity. I too see some issues with the way that this ordinance is put together. It wasn't thoroughly thought out, and research wasn't even done on the code. Let's talk about some dates initially. So 1958 UBC code, which was a little bit different than the international code that we have adopted now. There were a few different codes back then, but UBC was the one that was adopted by the city of Laramie and lots of other municipalities at the time. They had a minimum of a 5 square foot opening, no dimension less than that. And prior to that, there wasn't anything. You move into 1970 and 73, and the opening was 5 square foot, but then they changed the dimensions to only 22 inches wide with a seal height of 48 inches. And let's get back to 1958. That too had a seal height of 48 inches. Those seal heights were very clear about the seal and not the actual opening of the window. Then we get into 1976 through 1991 and actually through 98. And the minimum opening then became 5.7 square foot with a minimum height of opening 24 inches, minimum width of 20 inches. The seal height was still 44 inches. Then we get into 1997 and all the way through 2004, still 5.7, 20-inch minimum width, 24-inch height with a minimum seal height of 44 inches. And then that also gets into some ladders and different things for the egress windows in the basements. 2009 through 2018, minimum opening 5.7 square foot. Grade and basement windows, grade is your main level, and basement windows are 5 square feet. All of this is coming right out of the code books. The height was 24 inches, minimum width 24 inch, and the seal height was 44 inches. And then in the 2021 code, it is 5.7 square foot, still 5 square foot on the main levels and basements, and the seal height of 44 inches. So there's a lot of misconception as to what is truly an egress window. Everybody is under the impression that it is 5.7 square feet, which is not necessarily the case. There's a lot of people that are changing out windows at a very high rate of expense. Let's just say the average is right around $7,000 per window. which we were misled to believe in the beginning of all of this, which really there should have been a little bit more homework done. Now, if you get to the residential code on housing, there's a lot of exceptions here. When we start looking at some of these codes, every code has some additional items or exceptions. For instance, an existing operable window shall provide a minimum net clear opening of 4 square feet with a minimum net clear opening height of 22 inches and a clear opening of 20 inches. That is if you are in a basement and you are not doing any types of repairs. So the city can't force upon something different than the code when you've adopted everything from the code book, but you haven't been completely informed. And the other thing that takes place, and there's a lot of stuff here, and I would highly recommend that each city council member please read through the code book and go through the egress windows and look at everything that is there. It also indicates in the code book that if you are replacing a window, that you are required to replace it with the largest opening you can fit in that window, but it does not indicate that if you are not doing any types of remodeling, that you are required to put an egress window in. And so this is something that is totally off course from what you guys have indicated from the initial ordinance here. The other thing is we jump back into the ordinance, and I have to agree with Mr. Glass about a lot of this stuff in the ordinance. There are a lot of openings here, and I know that you guys had, you know, the legal situation, and then it was stepped away from. That was a particular topic that it was brought up on, and there are so many things in here that are just not covered very well. So you get into here and you start talking about the plumbing and the electrical and the heating, and you guys clearly mentioned that as long as it was done according to the era of the build, as long as it met the code at that point in time. But it is missing from the egress window portion, you know, and there lacks the consistency that should be inside of this. You know, let's talk about, there's one particular item here, but I can go on and it'll just take forever. The structural integrity of roofs, floors, walls, foundations, and other structural components shall be capable of resisting loads prescribed by the building code in effect at the time of the construction, okay? And it goes on and it says this through each one of these items, except for egress windows. So you guys have eliminated that on the egress window portion, but literally, if you're going to do everything based on the time of the era of the build, then it should be done at that point in time. And it's really unfair for people who have met all the code requirements when a building permit was pulled and they were issued a building permit, and all of a sudden now they have to start making changes. What are we going to do in 2024 when the new code book comes out if there's a change? Are we going to adopt that and make everybody now upgrade their windows? You know, that's just like going back and saying, you know, you had a house built in 1970 and you had an R13 insulation, but now it's an R59. And so with that being said, are we going to force everybody to change the components of their rental properties on a regular basis? I think not. It's just unfair, and it's not put together very, very well. So from these perspectives, I would highly recommend that you guys don't pass this ordinance. I am in favor of having good rental places to be rented out, and I think that they should be rented out from a perspective that each individual takes care of their property. You're not always going to get that. You're going to get a lot of people who comply, and even if this ordinance passes, you are going to have a lot of gaps. You don't have the manpower or the time or the financial budget to manage this thing thoroughly. You start getting into a lot of different things, and so I believe that this is a civil matter, and the question I ask is, if you guys pass this and there are problems from a landlord's perspective and he goes after said tenant because they damaged the place. Should we name the city as a party to that lawsuit as well? I don't think so, but this whole situation is truly a civil matter and doesn't have a whole lot to do with government. I think that you guys do a wonderful job on most parts of everything you guys do, and your jobs are very difficult, and I appreciate what each and every one of you guys contribute to this, but I think you guys really missed the boat on this one, and there's a lot of places where you guys are open to different types of legal battles if this does push through. I do appreciate your time. I do want to tell you guys that I really appreciate the street work on 9th Street. That was a wonderful project that they did this summer. I'd like to end this on that positive note. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for taking time out of your evening to be here and share your perspective and your questions with us, Mr. Cisneros. Public hearing is open on the item. Seeing no further requests for comment on this item, we'll go ahead and close the public hearing and move to our third and final public hearing this evening. City Clerk, if you could please read the notice.
Notice is hereby given that a public hearing of the Laramie City Council will be held Tuesday, December 6th, 2022 at 6:30 p.m. via Zoom webinar for the following purpose. Original ordinance number 2054, adding LMC Chapter 2.34, Laramie Urban Renewal Agency. All information relative to this matter is available for review at the City of Laramie City Clerk's office at 406 Ivinson Avenue, Laramie, Wyoming. Anyone wishing to be heard should be present or may be represented by his or her agent at the meeting.
Thank you very much. Public hearing is open, and anyone that would like to speak to this item is asked to do so now. I'm going to go ahead and recognize Tom Mattimore. Let's let Mr. Mattimore in to make some comments, and then we'll call on the next folks. Mr. Mattimore, you have the floor. Thanks.
Honorable Mayor, City Councilors, thank you for the time. As you know, I've been opposed to this from the start, and it is primarily because I've lived through the ills of urban renewal and seen it destroy more than it's built. One of the most money on urban renewal projects in the United States of America has been for professional football and baseball stadiums. So I'm not a big fan of it. The newest basketball arena in Brooklyn was done through an urban renewal agency. I also think that we have some conditions in Laramie that are in desperate need of improvement. We also have some city property that is looking for a financial revenue stream to see if we can do something to improve that property once we move out to the new buildings up on 3rd Street, North 3rd Street. My main concern with this is adopting the state ordinance in its entirety provides no time limit and no sunset clause on it. And to me, this is establishing a permanent bureaucratic organization that will be, maybe not now, I'm sure everybody right now has the best of intentions and has specific goals in mind. What happens 10 years from now when you have an urban renewal agency in search of projects that may not be needed or may not even be warranted? So that's been the consistent problem with urban renewal agencies throughout the history of them since 1949. We had the misery that Robert Morgenthau did to New York City, destroying neighborhoods, destroying businesses, and forcing people into substandard housing that still exists today, that are centers of crime and poverty. We will not probably do that here because I think we're a better quality government and better quality people. But what happens when in the future things get out of hand and you have no provision to sunset this. Also, I think you're going to have some serious problems. I would have loved to seen you take the provision of the 5 mile zone outside of city limits out of this, because I think if this stands with this provision where you can go and declare an area blighted outside of the city limits, you're going to have fights with the county over extraterritorial prerogatives. And I think it will also interfere with a lot of the work that is being done on the urban growth plan, which I think is desperately needed for the city to provide a stable future and a stable path for the city to grow. But if we're going to just willy-nilly have the ability to go into county territory and say, this is blighted and we're going to do whatever provisions there are in section 15, I think we're going to be in fights with the city that'll jeopardize, with the county, that'll jeopardize other matters. All in all, I think I've made this point to you numerous times, and I hope you would at least amend the state ordinance to remove the extraterritorial powers from that and not adopt it as something for the city, and then also try and put a sunset clause in it. Other than that, I want to thank you for your time. You all know I've read the things I've sent, and so you know where I stand. And I would also, if I get the chance to speak on this again with the ordinance, depending on, I may just wait. I'll see, but it's a third reading. So thank you for your time.
Mr. Manowar, thank you for taking time out of your evening to be here with us. And to answer your question, as you know, you will have a second time to speak on this when the item comes up tonight on the agenda. So you're welcome to do so again at that time, as does anyone else that wishes to. Next up for requests to speak on this item, we have Brett Glass. Let's let Mr. Glass into the room. Mr. Glass, you've got the floor for your comments.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of council. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I've expressed some concerns about this before. I'd just like to point out the definitions, I guess, that are key to this in Wyoming statutes, chapter 15, section 9, paragraph 103. It defines, basically what it does is it says that an urban renewal authority is intended to deal with what they call blighted areas. And a blighted area, if you read through the definition, is one that is a menace to the public health, safety, morals, or welfare in its presence, condition, and use. Now, yes, we have some rundown areas in Laramie. We have that. We have the old city shops on North 4th Street. Some of these are run down and some of these are ugly, but are any of them really a menace? I think that there's a big concern here that if the city goes ahead with this, it's going to be challenged as to whether whether these things are actually a menace. The city buildings on North 4th Street are simply old, and I've watched as the city planners have talked about very ambitious projects for housing and mixed-use development on North 4th Street. Frankly, that's not justified by this. The best thing that we can do, I think, and also the most economical thing we can do, is simply sell the land with the buildings if they'll buy them, if some developer will buy the land with the buildings, to someone who's ambitious, who has their own plans. And if there's a good business case for redeveloping that, then the developer will gladly do it on their own. And the city will save the money that it would pay in interest on bonds. It'll save the capital it would put into the project. In general, this would all work out much better. And in fact, the state statute says that the city should seek alternatives in the private sector before it undertakes these projects itself. It's a very bad time for the city to get into this. We just spent. I took a tour today of the facilities north of the city now, the new city shops, and they're gorgeous. But we spent a ton of money on those, And we would have to borrow yet more and spend yet more that could be used for much more practical purposes to do this sort of a project. So, and also, this is a very bad time to borrow money. The bonding authority, which is provided by statute, lets us issue bonds. But right now, interest rates are spiking. And we shouldn't be doing this right now. We should pick a more opportune time if we're going to issue bonds. So for all of these reasons, I don't see justification for forming an urban renewal authority. And I would urge council to forbear from doing this unless there really is a menace, unless there really is a dire need to borrow money. And if there's some need for the city to develop something as opposed to letting the private sector judge the market and pick the right thing to do with any of these properties. Well, that's all I have to say. I appreciate your time. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for taking time to share your comments with the council on this item. Public hearing is open. Further comments on this item, and it will come up on the agenda this evening. Seeing no further requests for comment during the public hearing, we'll close the public hearing on this item. Which brings us to 6C, item 6C, announcements. Are there any announcements? I believe we have an announcement from the city manager. City manager.
Hi, good evening, council. We have 3 announcements for you this evening. The first from the Office of the City Clerk with respect to the rental registration program.
Good evening,
City
Mayor
Clerk.
and Council. Yeah, thank you, Mayor. We just wanted to send out a quick reminder that the rental housing registration program is open and available for both online applications and paper applications. So if you have any questions, please visit cityoflaramie.org/rental housing, and it'll provide you all the information that's been passed through City Council as well as those applications.
Thank you, Nancy. Our second announcement tonight, Council, is with respect to an upcoming event in 10 days. Chief Brown from the Laramie Police Department will help me with this. I think, Council, you are familiar with the Shop with a Cop community focused program, and Laramie PD will be hosting that event again this year, and I will let Chief Brown fill in the details for you.
Good evening,
Chief
Mayor.
Brown.
Good evening, council members. On December 16th at about 3:15, we're going to have approximately 30 kids participating in this year's Shop with a Cop event. This is the biggest one that we've done. It's the 3rd annual one. Due to COVID restrictions, the last couple of years were a little bit smaller than we'd like to have been. This year's been an overwhelming outreach opportunity for the members of our community. We had a huge response, and we've gotten 30 officers partnering with our partners from Fish and Game, the Sheriff's Department, University of Wyoming Police Department, and our own police department to make sure that we have a successful event this year. So I would like to thank Assistant Chief Robert Terry, Officer Alex Bailey, and then the members of the Laramie Police Department Foundation who have made it possible this year. It's been a lot of work for them, but they've done an amazing job with our partners at Walmart and Starbucks to create an event that's going to be something for these kids to remember. So hopefully we can make their holiday season a little merrier this year. So we're excited about it. December 16th. You can find the press release on our Facebook page, and then also more information at the Laramie Police Department and Laramie Police Foundation sites.
Thank you, Chief Brown.
Appreciate that.
Thank you.
Mayor, our final announcement is coming out of the Assistant City Manager's office, and I suspect that many of you have been by Washington Park over the last week and had the chance to see the amazing light display there. Todd's going to tell us a little bit more about the Winter Light Festival this year.
Good.
Thank you, Janine. Honorable Mayor, City Council. Tonight with us, we've got Brian Welper from Tough Guys, who's here tonight. And we're going to go through a little short presentation. And I'm going to let Brian tell you a little bit about the Winter Lights Festival that they put on and how they pulled it together. Brian, do we got you in the room?
We don't yet, we will shortly.
I think I'm on.
There you go. Welcome.
Hey, thanks for having me tonight. I appreciate Todd for bringing me on. The Winter Lights Festival is something that we've been wanting to do for a little bit throughout the state of Wyoming. There's a lot of other municipalities that have kind of a free walking display of lights. And so it's something that I saw a couple of years ago that I wanted to do something and bring it to Laramie. And with our company and all that, we were able to, I met with Todd and I gave him my crazy idea and he was very willing to listen to it. And so we kind of came up with this idea back and we kind of presented it to the city for the permit in September. And yeah, and so we basically just wanted to create a free walking display of lights while also raising money and just creating something unique to Laramie. And so we came up with the Winter Lights Festival, worked with a bunch of different people on this, and yeah, I mean, I think you guys have probably been by there to see it. We partnered with, and as Todd has up in this great PowerPoint presentation, we partnered with over 40 different businesses and individuals here in the Laramie community, which to me, I love Laramie. I'm not originally from Laramie. I came here to go to school, but I've made it my home. We've been in business 15 years, and I think small business is what keeps Laramie so unique and so great. And so we were able to partner with over 40 different businesses, as you can see on the screen, to make this happen. It's definitely something I couldn't have done without their sponsorship, as that sponsorships, there's a lot of money in these lights and a lot of manpower to get these lights up and to make this happen. So I thank all those participating sponsors. That's going to happen. We're hoping that we've already got a wait list of 10 more businesses that want to do it next year. So we hopefully can grow that and keep partnering with businesses throughout Laramie. The best part about this is it's a free event to the public, but also through the different sponsorships, we raised $3,000 from all the different businesses. And then for this year, Tough Guys is going to match that $3,000. So in total, we will be donating $6,000 between the 3 different organizations we have listed: Laramie Foster Closet, Big Brothers Big Sisters, and Climb Wyoming. And the big part of who we decided to donate to was we wanted this to directly affect the kids in our community. That's what this light display is for everyone in Laramie, but we definitely wanted to bring something fun for the kids. And then in addition to that $6,000 that we are donating, we opened up all Fridays and Saturday nights as you can see on the shelter, to different organizations throughout Laramie where we are not charging for that spot, and people are just in there, and all those organizations that are in there are selling hot chocolate and treats. Toys for Tots was collecting toys. We had a Toys for Tots night. And just in we've only had 2 nights. And we've been able to, those organizations together combined have raised over $800 for their different organizations, as well as the Toys for Tots were able to, I think they said they had 51 toys donated that night. So it just it's a way for them to get out. We have Laramie Foster Closet hosting this weekend, and yeah, I think they have over 750 treats to sell. And like I said, all that money goes to their organization. And we were overwhelmed at the grand opening. I appreciate the city's help with that, and the Laramie Police Department for their help with that. There probably was a traffic problem going on around Washington Park, which I was expecting 300 people maybe at the grand opening, but we have such a fantastic community that we estimated over 2,000 people were at that grand opening. We partnered with Uniwyo and Hits 106, Wolf Creek Broadcasting, and then Human Being of Laramie. Human Being of Laramie donated all that hot chocolate we had, and then the Laramie Police Department escorted in Santa. So I think it was a memorable night for everyone involved, and we're hoping that this is year 1 of many to come. And so we appreciate the city's willingness to allow us to use one of our, I'm not going to say one, it is everyone's favorite park. We love Washington Park, and we hope, like we said, that this is year 1 of many to come. So thank you, Council. Thank you, Todd Fieser. Thank you to the City of Laramie, and thank you to all of my sponsors that jumped on board to help out with this.
Honorable Mayor, what I really hope to do was give us a chance to tell Brian thank you for what his company pulled off. And I think we found a gem that's going to continue. So we're going to pass that thank you right back to Brian and Tough Guys for what they've done.
Yeah, absolutely. Assistant City Manager, absolutely. Mr. Welper, thank you for your leadership on this issue and your involvement with it at every level. Obviously, everything that you said about the value of this kind of seasonal event is 100% spot on. And council's, of course, glad to hear about everything that our city staff has been doing to try to help you. But most of all, we just want to give you that thanks and that recognition for you taking such a leadership role in this. Now, you don't expect the council to pick a favorite park, but I appreciate your comments about the selection. And I've been by it many times just to look at it whenever I'm out in the evening. It's really cool. What's a lot cooler is to hear about that fundraising effort to pitch in and help with some of those nonprofit efforts as well, to roll that into it. It's just good to hear about. It's kind of what the season is for. And it's great to see the community taking an opportunity to step up and do something that's both fun, because you get to go see the lights, you can walk around the park, and just give that opportunity to people to pitch in. So everything that the assistant city manager said, I just kind of want to pile on to and just give you that recognition. We've got a couple other council members. Yeah, go ahead, Ms. Welp.
I appreciate it. And I also want to point out, this was a cool thing because as a crew and as we've talked with my committee, we talked about creating something that is for Laramie and something different. And I was there on the Saturday night after the grand opening, and it was a light snowfall, and it was a perfect night to be there because it wasn't windy and all that. It was perfect. And I saw so many families out there playing in the snow, running around, and I thought, we did it. Like, we created something for Laramie. And so thank you. I appreciate it.
That's no problem. I just want you to hang out because I know there's a few other comments, and I'm just going to make one more, which is that the business that you're here representing tonight, I think, has well established itself as a business that's more than just about doing, what it does professionally, but it's also about that community building and giving back. And I think that's seen by the people in this community and by folks on this council, and it's highly appreciated. I'm going to call on Councilmember O'Doherty, and then I'll go to the next council member. Councilmember O'Doherty.
I want to thank Tough Guys, Brian and Tough Guys, but I also want to put a plug in for the event on Friday. I just want people to know it starts at 5:30 to 7:30 for Laramie Foster Closet. And they're besides buying cocoa and cookies, you could bring gently used and new warm winter apparel for kids in need. So that's a good opportunity there. Thanks for bringing that together, Brian.
Thank you.
Councilmember Harrington.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thanks, Council, for letting me just make this a little bit longer. But Mr. Welper, I just wanted to say thank you. I think this is a tremendous addition to the community, and you should be quite proud of the work your company has done for bringing together all these stakeholders and making something that is new, unique, and very appreciated in our community. I drive by it most days now. And my daughter loves looking at it out the car window. We've been to walk through a few times. It's a real highlight. So I just wanted to take a minute to say thank you as well.
Thank you. Appreciate you.
Assistant City Manager Feeser, I think the council would also like to point out that we were appreciative of seeing the energy consumption data that was shared with us about how this is being powered, and kind of fits in with some of the other things that we're trying to do here in Laramie. So we appreciate that as well. Mr. Welper, I just want to close by saying, we've got some effort towards building some holiday season traditions in this community. We've got the parade that people like. We have efforts like Wreaths Across America, which were mentioned by Councilmember Schuster earlier this evening. We have things like the community Christmas program to help those who may need some extra assistance with some of their holiday things, some of the other programs that we see nationally. And then something like this that has that real local feel and that local flavor, and all those things go towards building, those kind of holiday traditions that help you have a strong community. So thanks for being part of that.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
We appreciate you. City manager, do we have some other announcements or have we reached the end of the line for announcements? Okay.
Mayor, we are concluded.
All right. Really appreciate hearing about that program and a little bit from the organizers around it. That's good. Council, we come to item number 7, disclosures by city council members. Are there any council members that wish to make a disclosure about any of the items coming before us on the agenda or the consent agenda this evening? Seeing none, we'll move to item number 8. I'll call on the vice mayor to take us through that.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I move that the consent agenda be approved and that each specific action on the consent agenda be approved as indicated.
Second.
Motion and a second by Councilmember Somerville, that time by just a skosh. City Clerk, can we have a roll call vote?
Cumby,
Yes.
Gabriel, absent, Harrington,
Yes.
O'Doherty,
Yes.
Schmickel,
Yes.
Schuster,
Yes.
Somerville,
Yes.
Pierce,
Yes.
Weaver.
Yes.
That's 8 yeses, 0 nos, and 1 absent, Your Honor.
Thank you very much, City Clerk. That motion carries. The consent agenda has been approved at 7:26 p.m. We'll go to item number 10, the opening of the regular agenda. First up, we have item number 11, and I'll call on somebody here.
Mr. Mayor, that's me.
Councilmember Harrington. Yeah, I had to find my list. Thank you,
No problem.
Councilmember Harrington.
Sure, Mr. Mayor. I move to accept the grant award from the Office of Homeland Security, SHSP grant program to the City of Laramie in the amount of $150,000 to support Regional Emergency Response Team number 3, RERT number 3, and authorize the fire chief and city attorney to sign and amend the 2022-2023 fiscal year City of Laramie budget.
Second.
Motion and a second from Vice Mayor Pierce. I'd like to recognize Chief Johnson. Welcome back.
Hello, Honorable Mayor, members of council. What you have before you tonight, we presented the authorization to apply for this grant in May, which you approved. We put in for $150,000 and was awarded everything we asked for this fall. It's a sustainment grant for our regional emergency response team efforts. The money gets spent on training, exercises, and equipment. I stand for any questions. So,
thank you. Any questions for Chief Johnson on this program? Doesn't look like it. Chief, it seems to be just another valuable funding pool we can tap in to help meet expectations and public safety needs, and we appreciate hearing about it.
yes.
Appreciate the opportunity for the city to be part of it, and thank you for heading it up for us. We'll see if there's public comment. Seeing no request for public comment on this item, we'll close the public comment period. Council, I'll come back to you just briefly to see if you thought of anything before we call on the city clerk for a roll call vote, please. Oh, go ahead, city clerk. I'm sorry.
No, that's okay, Mayor. Cumby,
Yes.
Gabriel, absent, Harrington,
Yes.
O'Doherty,
Yes.
Schmickel,
Yes.
Schuster,
Yes.
Somerville,
Yes.
Pierce,
Yes.
Weaver.
Yes.
That's 8 yeses, 0 nos, and 1 absent, Your Honor.
Thank you, city clerk and council. That motion carries, and that's going to take us to item number 12. And for item number 12, I'm going to call on Councilmember Cumby.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move that City Council approve the application for a new restaurant liquor license number R71 for Pamela J. Delgado Garcia, doing business as Garcia's Mexican Restaurant, located at 111 East Grand Avenue for the licensing term December 7, 2022 through May 7, 2023, and authorize the mayor and city clerk to sign.
Second.
A motion and a second by Councilmember O'Doherty. City Clerk, we've heard once about this already, but if you could provide us any background.
Sure, Mayor, thank you. On November 14th, the city clerk's office received an application for a new restaurant liquor license in the previous location of Cask 307. We had received notification that they closed at the beginning of October. This is that location with Garcia's Mexican restaurant. Pamela is also a restaurant owner in Torrington, so she does come with previous experience. And so she is here with us this evening, and I would be happy to let her in here. If you have any questions, she's happy to answer that. Just as a reminder, restaurant liquor license, they do require a 60% food sales per state statute, which they're well aware of and ready to go on. So thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, City Clerk. Appreciate that. And welcome back. If there's anything at this time that you wanted to kind of share with us regarding your vision for your business and any other, more detailed comments that you wanted to give us, now is certainly a good time. If there isn't anything that you'd like to add over the last time, that's okay too, but we'll go ahead and recognize Angelica and Pamela again, if there's anything they want to share with us.
I apologize about that.
Not a problem.
I'm not very good with computers.
You're doing great.
I would just like to thank all of you for taking the time and for accepting my application. I'm a hard worker. My family's a hard worker. I'm happy to join Laramie. I'm happy for this opportunity, and I would like to thank all of you very much.
Well, you are more than welcome. We want to thank you for pursuing your business ideas here in Laramie, and we heard from the city clerk that you've got some experience in the industry, and we'd like to hear about that too. And we wish you great success with your future endeavors.
I really appreciate that. Thank you so much.
You're more than welcome. I've got Councilmember O'Doherty with a comment or a question. Councilmember O'Doherty.
I just want to say I have experience eating in the restaurant in Torrington. That is very good. So I look forward to having you here. Thanks.
Thank you so much.
Any other council members with any comments? We'll go to public comment on it too, just in case. All right, public comments open if anybody wants to participate. Seeing no request for public comment, we'll close that. And seeing no request from the council for further comments or questions, I'll ask the city clerk to please give us a roll call for the vote.
Gabriel, absent. Harrington.
Yes.
Somerville.
Yes.
Schmeckel.
Yes.
Schuster.
Yes.
O'Doherty.
Yes.
Cumby.
Yes.
Pierce.
Yes.
Weaver.
Yes.
That's 8 yeses, 0 nos, and 1 absent, Your Honor.
That motion carries. Congratulations, and we wish you the best of luck.
Thank you so much.
That takes us now to item number 13, and I'll call on Councilmember Harrington.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move that City Council approve the memorandum of understanding between Bird Rides Incorporated and the City of Laramie for the provision of stand-up electric scooter sharing system and authorize the mayor and clerk to sign.
Second.
As a motion and a second from Vice Mayor Pierce. Let's call on Assistant City Manager Feeser for the background.
Honorable Mayor, City Council, thanks for this opportunity. In July of 2021, we were approached by Bird Rides Inc. to enter into an MOU for stand-up electric scooters. December of 2021, we extended that for a year through December 31st, 2022, and Bird has requested an extension of the MOU to continue with the provisions of this mobility enhancement system. Over the past year and a half now, we've had some complaints. Most revolve around the placement of the scooters, landing in the right-of-ways or rebalancing, and our local fleet manager has received some of those complaints and worked to correct those issues. We do have a new senior account executive, Garrett Gronowski. Nancy, if you could let him in, maybe, or Council or Mayor Weaver, if you let him in, I'd like to turn it over to him in just a second. But Mr. Gronowski is working with me over the past couple of weeks to address some of those issues as far as rebalancing, and also to address the violation, the code enforcement letter violation that we've been dealing with on where Bird was operating out of. On a more positive note, in early November, Birds Ride Inc. reported over 23,000 rides through the end of October. So that was a year and about 2 months of operation. They had 200 scooters deployed, 40,000 miles have been traveled, and had saved on carbon emissions over that time. With that, staff does believe there's value in a mobility sharing system. I've witnessed it myself. I know that people that may not have vehicles do utilize these systems, and I'd like to turn it over to Mr. Gronowski for him to speak to you about what he'd like to.
Excellent.
Let's
Thank you,
do that.
Todd. Mr. Mayor, Council, can you guys hear me loud and clear?
Absolutely. Go ahead.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you. As the warm introduction was, my name is Garrett Gronowski. I have taken over from Taylor Kenny as your account manager. I'm not new to Bird. I'm actually one of the longest standing employees. I've been with Bird for 5 years. So since we actually pioneered this space back in 2017 when we launched in Santa Monica, I joined quickly after that in 2018. Have been in the account management role, operations, account executive, government partnerships. So kind of a someone who's been in a lot of aspects of the business. So really excited to bring that knowledge to help you guys grow this business and improve operations. Obviously, Ty went over those numbers. Just one quick correction. Those numbers are just from 2022. So the last, 12 months. So over 23,000 rides, over 40,000 miles traveled. Over 5.6 metric tons of CO2 saved as well. And this is all done on only 200 birds. That's 200 birds in the fleet. You can kind of think about 60, 70% of those birds are actually on the road servicing the community. So we are looking to get approval to continue running operations and working with the city. Obviously, we have heard those complaints, and do we want to talk about addressing those? Bird, we are a data company at our core, and obviously the city has that data dashboard, so we can see trends, we can see hot spots, we can help better serve the community with this data, and that's exactly what we're planning to do. So what we're generally planning to do, obviously we have that local fleet manager. We're going to go through a retraining process with that local fleet manager. Number one, to ensure that our rebalancing and touch points on the scooters is improved from this past year. We're going to do that by, leveraging the data. Where are the scooters ending up? What time of the day are they ending up in certain locations? And then actually we want to promote something called community mode within the Bird app. All community members can use that. It's actually a self-police and regulate and help us move those scooters as well. All you guys do is log into the app. Even if you aren't a Bird user, you can just download the app. And if a scooter's out of place, all you do is take a picture of it. Our tech aligns with our GPS. We can see what rider was associated with that bird at that time. But the more cool aspect of that community mode, it actually sends a text message to that local fleet manager that triggers a timely response. So the more reports and more pictures that we have going out, the better we can service those locations as well. With all those data points, we can actually create something called preferred parking locations. These are popular parking locations. As you know, we are a dockless model. No additional infrastructure needs to be implemented, but we can, put virtual parking spots in the app. app. So you open up the app, you see the operating zone, you see the available bird scooters to rent and to ride, and then you'll also see kind of like a parking garage P. Those are popular parking areas where we're going to incentivize and recommend that these individuals park. We can also start the scooters there, those initial parking spots. We like to call them nest locations. As you know, there's a lot of bird puns when you work with us. And then also we do understand that there has been some incompliance where the birds have been charging. We're addressing that. Obviously, we're hibernating the birds for the winter season. So we're then planning to relaunch in the spring. So we will make sure that where the fleet manager is storing and charging the vehicles behind closed doors is in compliance with where the city wants us to be.
Thanks, Mr. Gronowski. One other thing to add is just here recently, we have been contacted by another scooter company about an interest coming to Laramie. We do not have an exclusive agreement with Bird, so we may be seeing another forthcoming request to deploy scooters within our community. We'll be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Questions? Councilmember O'Doherty.
All right. I was wondering why we can't just have a phone number on the birds so that somebody that doesn't want to put another app on their phone because they don't ride scooters, but they see them on a, like, I'm afraid to move one from a ramp because I don't want to look like well, I probably couldn't lift it if I don't. So anyway, I just would like to see a phone number, like a bumper stickers on these with the phone numbers for people that don't have the app. Is that something that's possible?
There's a phone number and email address on every vehicle in the field. So that's directed straight to our customer service team. It's not going to be as quick of a response as that community mode, but if you do not want to download the app, there is a physical phone number and email address on every scooter.
Can you tell me where that is? Because I didn't notice it. Yeah. Thanks.
Yeah, I'll actually share a picture of our scooter with it to Todd, and he can, shoot it out to everyone there. That'd be awesome.
Up next, I've got Councilmember Cumby.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Gronowski, I'm glad to hear that that you've taken serious some of our concerns and that the app has been updated in such a way that you will be able to respond more quickly. And I've just had a number of instances where there were 6, 7 of them parked on 15th Street. I called the number that is on the scooter, no response. 3 days later, the 7 scooters still there. I call it again and finally went to the assistant city manager and was able to get that done. There are many times when I wind up just going out and moving them myself and getting them out of the way. So in section B of the memorandum, it says birds shall respond to all rebalancing. What is rebalancing? Does that mean when they fall over, you pick them up?
No, rebalancing is a bird phrase where we moved unwanted scooters back to designated parking locations. So as you said, maybe a scooter would be blocking a ramp, or, it's just in a sidewalk where an individual didn't take the extra, 3-5 seconds to park it next to, furniture loading zone, a bike rack. So if there is a scooter obstructing the pedestrian walkway, out of the pedestrian walkway is really what we want to drive home on where to park. But if it's obstructing the pedestrian walkway and you report it, and obviously we receive it, that's why I'm really promoting this community tool to you guys. And also you can always reach out to me via my phone number or email to escalate it even quicker. Please share that as well with everyone here. But as soon as that local fleet manager receives it, they have 3 hours to respond and to move that scooter.
And I'm also very glad to hear that you are going to relocate where you store and recharge the scooters because I'm the council person for the area where you previously had them, and it was quite a disruption for the neighbors.
Yep.
So I will be happy to report to them this, and I'm happy to hear that you'll be doing retraining so that Bird operates at a professional level. So I think it's been a good thing for many people in the community, and that I'm happy to hear that management is responding and that you have heard our concerns. So thank you very much.
Absolutely. Thank you.
I have hands up from Councilmember Somerville and Councilmember Harrington. I don't know who was first. Councilmember Harrington, I'm going to call on Councilmember Somerville since she's first in the queue on my screen. Councilmember Somerville.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you for being here tonight, Mr. Gronowski. My question has to do with the conversation that we had last year about continually reassessing the areas that the bird scooters operate in. There were some limitations and some geofences that were put in place with the initial operation. I just wanted to kind of touch on that conversation in terms of, access up to Walmart in that area, if that's working. A question about access, about the availability on the University of Wyoming campus. That is a request that I've gotten multiple times as a council member. And then also maybe needing a review over here in West Laramie about how many bird scooters are available over here in the west side of the tracks.
Yeah, and just to better understand that, so you are talking about having birds start the day over in those certain areas?
No, sir. My understanding is that they are geo-fenced out of the University of Wyoming, that they either slow down significantly or don't operate in that area. And then pertains to the east side of town where Walmart and the high school and the workforce services and stuff, if that is working up there. And then the other question on the west side is, have we examined the operations over here in West Laramie?
Yeah, absolutely. So a geofence would only be implemented on request from the city or the university. Bird would never implement a geofence, especially around a university. Obviously, that demographic, high utilization and high ridership comes from that. Excuse me if I don't know those answers off the top of my head right now. Again, I am just transitioning over into this role, so I can definitely do a review onto all those geofences. Todd, maybe if you have a little bit more insight since you've been working with Taylor the whole year.
Absolutely. I think Councilor Summer, or through Mayor Weaver to Councilor Somerville, if you look at the bird and review the heat map, I think it gives you a good idea. The geofencing for the University of Wyoming was at the request of the University of Wyoming. They simply just didn't want scooters going through Prexy's pasture and being tightly. And if you look at that heat map that's on that 2022 bird end of year review, you can see the area that's been geofenced out for as far as University of Wyoming. As far as the scooter working up towards Walmart, it indicates that scooters are operating up in that area. And that's one thing that I was actually pleasantly surprised to see is the heat coming out of West Laramie, the heat map starting to show more usage out of West Laramie. So I think we're seeing the usage start to develop and get stronger and stronger. And you can see that coverage in purple on that map that shows up there. That indicates to me that we're starting to see use in West Laramie, and it's working up by Walmart and having good use across the community and still following the rules or the requests of the University of Wyoming. Does that help?
Thank you to both of you. That does help. I would just, again, say one of the most received requests that I get in regards to bird scooters is getting access on the University of Wyoming campus. So I don't know what the process is to have that conversation with UW or even if it's appropriate or warranted, but that is a request.
You know, Honorable Mayor, through you to Councilor Somerville, when we had initially done this, I had reached out to the university and so had Michael Cavato, who was with Bird at that time, and it was pretty emphatic no, and the trustees were even a no, that they didn't want the scooters on the university. I don't know, but I probably not politically savvy enough to figure out how that mechanism works to try to get it reconsidered at this point. But I'm happy to do so if there's some suggestions or somebody we could approach.
Yeah, and even with all of the data that we've collected and the success that we have seen within the city limits, we can definitely approach them and be like, hey, like maybe if we don't start scooters, initially deploy them on campus, let's still open it up so university students can take it straight up to the class. If they want to get home late from studying and scooters are there throughout the day, that's definitely been kind of a path to success in university markets before that we've seen work.
Thank you, and I appreciate that. I think in terms of not just requests that I get, but my interest in a council member is continuing to develop alternative modes of transportation to the university in light of the parking issues and the bus not being very robust to meet the need at UW right now. So again, I don't know if it's appropriate to make that request to the university, but it is a request that's out there from community members.
Thank you for letting us know.
Okay, Councilmember Harrington, thanks for waiting.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, after the previous conversation, when the council discussed, I think Councilor Cumby's the councilor who brought it up previously with her 6 or 7 scooters parked in front of her house for a prolonged period of time. I shared that I was a bird user and had an interest in bird continuing in Laramie. And so I reached out to, I think Taylor was the name at the time, but found them to be quite responsive. And I think you all have noticed an interest in improving the operations of bird in Laramie. So, with that, I would encourage a yes vote from the council members on this memorandum. But I did have a question, and that was along the lines of expanding options within Laramie. And I know Bird provides other sorts of, I guess, micro mobility options. And I'm curious if there's any interest from Bird in offering electric bicycles in Laramie. I know you all operate bike shares in cities, and I was curious if that was an option as well.
Yeah, our electric bike share production was severely slowed down with COVID. So we are not exactly to the point where we want to. We have just released them for the first time into cities this year. Right now, they're only operating in larger metropolitan cities. But our hope is that we get our inventory up and we can start expanding that to more markets that we operate. So as of right now, I would say we're going to continue to be laser focused on scooter operations, but down the road, we absolutely hope we can get to that point.
Understood. Thank you. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Thanks for waiting. Other questions? Mr. Gronowski, I have a question for you. Given your experience with Bird and the length of time you've been with them, I wonder if you might just share with us if what we are talking about and some of our questions and concerns that we've raised to you are typical of growing pains with a program like this in the community, or are we seeing some things that are perhaps a little more atypical due to certain unique aspects of Laramie? If you could just share a little bit with that.
No, I would say the pain points are very common to communities your size and even communities much, much bigger. At the same time, this alternative form of transportation, I mean, we did launch in 2021, but that is still relatively new, especially in the transportation world. So the more education that we can hit, the more Bird users that get that unique flow of, they know where they're going, because repeated trips is something we're seeing a lot of in the community as well. And the great thing about repeated trips is like you kind of know where you're going to park as well. So that will get rid of that clutter as well. But yeah, I would say it's pretty on point with a newer market in our eyes. And it's something that we continue to improve on daily with the data that is provided to us, and obviously working very hands-on with that local fleet manager.
And so, Mr. Gronowski, then using that data, have you seen similar situations with similar concerns turn around as your firm has sort of been able to get a better handle on these things and to figure out the particular adjustments that need to be made to make sure that there's a flow that decreases these concerns and just kind of adds more value to what we're looking for with alternative transportation? Has that been something you can point to of past experiences in other communities?
Yep, absolutely. And that's where kind of the solutions came from. So we've been running operations as long as, any other scoot provider there is. And, when we first launched, preferred parking wasn't a thing. Geofences weren't a thing. And this is something that we heard were pain points from cities, and we needed to come up with a solution to help improve operations on a day-to-day basis. So I've seen much worse operations turn themselves around, and we've been extended for multiple years in those cities and universities. So I'm very, very confident that we can do the same in your community.
Thank you for answering those questions. Councilmember Cumby.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Gronowski, I really do appreciate your coming tonight and your responsiveness and your solution-focused approach. Regarding access of the birds to the university, as you continue with negotiations with them, possibly, there could be some sort of a compromise where there are some parking areas where students could access them. And I've been in contact with a number of students who are very concerned about the reduction in parking and especially in student parking, and then safety issues and transportation issues at night because the bus does stop rather early. So I think it could be of great value and benefit to the students if they would possibly have parking areas in a specific place. Then they're not all over campus, but students do have access so they can get home at night. So
yep, absolutely. And we do truly view ourselves as a public transportation outlet. And who needs public transportation more than individuals without cars? And students are a lot of those individuals who don't have cars or have the luxury because parking's limited, cars are expensive, parking passes are even more expensive.
Yes.
So giving them an alternative form, and obviously we were all in school at one point, and those busing systems, they run on a timely schedule. If you miss the bus one time, you're going to be late to a class. So be able to substitute that and jump on a scooter and still get to campus in a timely manner. Or when it gets dark, especially when seasonality changes, it gets dark around 5 or 6 p.m. You still have classes then, and especially if you're at the library studying late. I'd much rather be on a scooter going home than walking when it's dark. So obviously there's a lot of ways we can work with universities. We have a lot of best practices, and we have universities where we have full operations and have an agreement with. We have universities with what you just suggested, where we have almost parking corrals where they're allowed to end their ride. We have universities where they can't start on campus, but throughout the day they're allowed to migrate to campus. Sorry about that, almost knocked my water bottle off. As this conversation evolves, we'll be able to share those best practices. And obviously if we do get the renewal, that's just going to strengthen the cause that this is going to be an inaugural or a continued alternative form of transportation in the community. So why not open it up to the university as well?
Thank you very much.
Councilmember O'Doherty.
Sorry, I have one more question. So I love the heat map, and I just want to know, and I want the public to know that if you click on our agenda for tonight, you can click on that report. But I was wondering, are they the starting and stopping points, or are they the whole ride?
So that is the starting and stopping point. So our GPS actually pings every 1 second. So you do have the ability to export ride data. So you could see rider X went from point A to point B, but you have to also understand how much data that would be. So it is pinging every second along that trip. So, we recommend if you do want to pull rider data, you pull a week or maybe 2 weeks. But if you try to pull even a month, let alone a year of trip data, that would crash about any server that I've ever come across. So yes, ride start and end.
Thank you.
Yep.
See if there's public comment. Open public comment if there is any for this item. Seeing none, we'll close the public comment period. Council? Assistant City Manager Fieser, Mr. Gronowski, I want to thank you for this agenda item coming forward and giving an opportunity to get some of these questions and concerns addressed that have been emerging since we started this, what was a pilot program here. And I, for one, am encouraged to hear that some of this is not in any way atypical, but is somewhat the usual course of business. It makes sense to me that there would be some hiccups and some headaches along the way towards really integrating this as an alternative transportation program. At the same time, I do think some of what you've heard is not just concerns from the council, but is more a reflection of occasional comments that we hear from constituents about wanting this to be a little bit more orderly in terms of where the scooters end up. And I think we've addressed that tonight. I think overall, generally the support for this kind of program is still there and is still high. We just have some adjustment period that we need to go through that we are, and improvements are being made. So I want to thank you for that and for your time, Mr. Gronowski, and also Mr. Fieser for your continued patience in the gripes and complaints that you're occasionally subjected to, which come from the council as a reflection of what we hear from constituents from time to time. City Clerk, can we have a roll call?
Harrington,
Yes.
Schuster,
Yes.
Somerville,
Yes.
Cumby,
Yes.
Gabriel, absent, Schmeckel,
Yes.
O'Doherty,
Yes.
Pierce,
Yes.
Weaver.
Yes.
That's 8 yeses, 0 nos, and 1 absent, Your Honor.
Thank you, City Clerk. Thank you, Council. That motion carries, and it's going to take us to the next item on our agenda. Which
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Council.
Absolutely. Thank you for your time. It's going to take us to our next item on the agenda, which will be item number 14. I'll call on Councilmember Schmeckel. Yes.
Thank you, Mayor. We'll have a motion to amend here momentarily. I move to approve original ordinance number 2053 on second reading, amending the definition of enforcement procedures, Laramie rental.
Can you repeat that motion, Councilor Schmeckel? Sorry.
Absolutely. I move to approve original ordinance number 2053 on second reading, amending the definitions and enforcement procedures of the Laramie Rental Housing Code.
Second.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Schmeckel, I had you repeat that because there was quite a bit of distortion on your first reading, but the second one was clear. So there's a motion and a second from Councilmember Harrington. We appreciate it very much. At this point in time, I'm going to call on our city attorney to walk us through a couple of things about the amendment.
Mayor and council, it's the same as you saw on first reading in the same context. This is not an effort to change anything of substance in the rental housing ordinance. It is meant to address a couple of points that came in that were made during the litigation about this ordinance. Those 2 points were number one, that the meat of the ordinance, the enforcement meat, does not come from an order from the city manager. The city manager manages the complaint process, and if it is not resolved satisfactorily, then the city manager's office can file a complaint in municipal court where the issue will be fully litigated. So we wanted to make that clear, that it's not an order of the city manager that will ever be a problem for somebody. It will be finally whether they have or have not complied with the substance of the ordinance. Second, and again, while I respect the judge, I'm not sure why the judge wasn't sure what kind of action it will be in municipal court. There's only one kind of action in municipal court, and that kind of action is a criminal action. So there were clarifications made to this to make that absolutely crystal clear that just like every other violation of ordinance, it will be processed as a criminal matter in municipal court. Now, what I, of course, have forgotten to do is listen to Councilor Schmeckel as to whether he made the amendment, the suggested amendment yet. And let me say, if that's going to be made, that was a matter of cleaning up a typographical error where when working over this part of the ordinance, as I just indicated, there was discussions of orders by the city manager. And so one of the word order was left in someplace where it shouldn't have been. So should you decide to make that motion, that's what that's about.
City Attorney, a preemptive explanation is always welcome. But I do believe that amendment is forthcoming. And that said, I think we'll go to Councilmember Schmidt.
Thank you, Mayor. I move to amend original ordinance number 2053 by striking the words "and order" from section 8.80.040, subsection G, item 1, paragraph E.
Second.
Motion and a second from the Vice Mayor. Discussion on the amendment if required. We've had the explanation about the technical change from the City Attorney. Any discussion on the amendment? All right, we'll go to public comment and we'll ask that that comment be restricted to the amendment at this time before we get back onto the main motion. Seeing none, we'll close the public comment period. Council, further discussion or questions? City Clerk, may I have a roll call vote on the amendment?
Schmeckel,
Yes.
Schuster,
Yes.
Somerville,
Yes.
Cumby,
Yes.
O'Doherty,
Yes.
Harrington,
Yes.
Gabriel, absent, Pierce,
Yes.
Weaver.
Yes.
That's 8 yeses, 0 nos, and 1 absent, Your Honor.
All right, that motion carries. Back to the main motion for further discussion. Councilmember O'Doherty.
When we initially discussed this ordinance, one of my main concerns was egress windows in basement apartments, in basements that had been retrofitted to be apartments, or basements that have, that have sleeping quarters in them. And many of them in Laramie do not have appropriate windows, and it's not safe. And so the egress egress window part of this is very important to me. But when it came up, we got complaints from the public that it wasn't defined. And so we put in how an egress window is defined at this point, like we're code right now. And I think Mr. Cisneros' point was a good one, that it should be appropriate to the time of the building. So I would like to figure out some verbiage for the next reading to, but not the whole building. Like if your building was built in 1940 and then the basement is turned into an apartment with a window or with sleeping quarters, then I think that definitely needs to be bigger than most of the basement apartments around here. So I will bring this up next time as an amendment. Just throwing that out there. Thank you.
Councilmember Harrington.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think Councilor O'Doherty, I've been mulling this over since the public hearing as well. I came down in a different place than you. And so I just wanted to speak to that. I think if the window is not accessible or large enough for you to get out of, it doesn't matter when it was put in. If there's a fire in your basement apartment, you don't survive. That to me is the reason for this portion of code. And I think I still hear the concern, and I've certainly heard it from other members of the public that this egress window component is one of the more costly elements of this. Certainly some of that is the lack of contractors and sort of the timelines associated with this. But I think maybe the more effective option, in my opinion, is not to remove the requirement to upgrade the egress of the dwelling. I think really the solution is to allow the city manager some leeway, which I believe we have done in when these can be installed, so long as there is a plan. Is the way I understand it, is so long as they can demonstrate a plan for when these will be installed. There's no reason to remove a bunch of people from their homes because this wasn't done by January 1, but there should be a plan. I mean, by now we're a year into this. So, I think I would hate for us to steer away from this component of it, because I do think it's really important that we have, safe dwellings that are, you're able to escape in an emergency, regardless of when it was built. If you're renting it, I think you are assuming that responsibility on behalf of your tenants. But I think maybe some flexibility on when these are implemented, so long as they're demonstrated, might be a more appropriate path forward, because I think it achieves both goals of sort of hoping to keep costs as low as we can for folks, but ultimately the market will dictate that.
Other comments or questions? Other comments or questions? Going in order, Councilmember Cumby.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First, I just want to say that I appreciate Mr. Cisneros' preparation that he did for tonight's meeting, and going over the code and how it has changed. I would like to say, ever since that, I've thought about this issue, and I agree with Councilor Harrington. I think at the very least, regardless of when the building, of when the structure was built, that a person needs to be able to escape a basement window in case of an emergency. So I think it should at least be the size that would accommodate an average human being. So thank you.
Thank you. Going in order, Councilmember Schuster.
Thank you very much. Listening to Mr. Cisneros and knowing several landlords here in town, I know of 10 houses that have been basically taken out and no longer are going to be rented because they're just going to sell them off and invest that money in something else. So each one of them would have had an upstairs and a downstairs apartment. Downstairs apartments are usually 50% less than an upstairs apartment because of, I'm going to use the word, the inconvenience and stairs and things like that. If a person puts an egress window in at $7,000, my church has a place that they're trying to mull over what to do with it, if to get rid of it or keep it. Usually a payback if somebody wants on an apartment is 5 years. So that means that the average for one egress window, the average cost to increase to rent that place will be somewhere around $117 a month. That would be a 5-year payback on that with no interest included. So I understand this. I understand the safety. I don't know what the odds are of dying in a house fire compared to even dying in a car, because people take risks every day. We talked about bird scooters just there. I watched them ride across a crosswalk like they're a pedestrian, and they're not. So whatever we see happen out of this, we are losing some rentals. And maybe that's okay, because I see new rental buildings being built every day too. So, but we are taking out the ma and pops places. that people that were using that income to help support them in their years. So what happens, but I just see what's happening, and the odds on having that fire, having not get out of it, are probably less than some of them driving a car. So I'm going to go with that. It will be what it'll be. This is what I love about democracy. We're going to vote on it, and that's what's going to happen. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Councilmember O'Doherty is next, in the speaking order.
I want to be clear that I absolutely would not want to reduce the size of egress windows in basements, because that's where people are most vulnerable, or attics that have been converted into sleeping spaces. But what I was referring to is if you have an apartment building that has windows that are big, but they're not today's standard, they're, a few decades back standard. We're not asking people to break out brick walls and expand windows. At least that wasn't my intention. So that's why I thought we should take into account if it was built originally as a bedroom and it fit the criteria at the time, that people shouldn't have to renovate those. But I think basement apartments, if they're just those little like 2 by 1 or something, 3 by 2 something windows, they're not adequate and they need to be upgraded. And if people have a problem with that, then I have a problem with them because people need to be safe, and we have fires and floods are going to be more prevalent, and we need to take care of people. Thanks.
Next up, I've got Councilmember Harrington, and then I'll keep going in order.
Mr. Mayor, since I've spoken already, if Councilor Somerville would like to go for a first time, it's fine with me.
I think that's in order. Thanks, Councilmember Harrington. Sorry about that, Councilmember Somerville. I didn't see you. Go ahead, Councilmember Somerville.
Mayor, no problem. I just wanted to add a thought. I certainly land on the safe of making sure that people are safe, but I don't know that it's so much what the building was built for in 1940, if I can use that example. The majority of the houses we're talking about here are tree area houses. Those were built as single family homes where you assumably had exits out of the basement going upstairs and potentially another exit out of the door. That's probably not the case now. At some point in time, that single family home that was built in 1940 was converted to a basement apartment, which actually isn't allowed under code, but they've been grandfathered in. So I just want to bring the council's attention to that. I don't think it's nearly as simple as when the building was built. I understand we don't want to cost people more money than we need to be safe, but I would just encourage the council, if this issue comes back up in 2 weeks, to think about that piece of it. That might have been a single family home for 40 years before somebody bought it and converted it and split it into apartments. And maybe that deserves some conversation and recognition as well. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councilmember Harrington.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to, a council member earlier mentioned that this would affect, mom and pop shops. And I wanted to just, maybe make the note that this affects every rental equally. And certainly there are corporations that have purchased considerable amounts of the rentals in our community, and it affects them exactly equally as every mom and pop. And if those no longer become viable options to rent because it is, not viable for you to put in egress windows and you have to sell it, it's a fantastic time to still sell a house. I don't think, I'm not sure that that's our place to be too concerned, but we're also not in a place where, folks are going to be selling houses for a considerable loss for what they purchase these rentals for. So I think, Mr. Mayor, I've contributed to this now twice, but I'm also not sure we're talking about the amendments that we've been, that the motion's been made on, and that occurs to me now. So I did want to just maybe acknowledge that and apologize to the council for helping lead us astray.
Councilmember Harrington, that responsibility rests with everyone that's spoken and will soon rest with me in just a moment. Unfortunately, this topic invites, frankly, a rehashing of the discussion that was had earlier when the original ordinance was passed, although we are trying to address concerns raised by the amendment. Specifically, it seems that the need to revisit the whole topic is just something that can't be resisted. On that line, I have a question for the city attorney, which is that the council, including myself, received a small handful of emails regarding the issue of, and this was raised the last time we discussed this as well, on the issue of the agent responsible versus owner, and where responsibility ultimately rests should a complaint find its way into municipal court. City attorney, are you familiar with the question that I'm raising?
Yeah.
And could you address that for me?
I'm familiar, Mayor. Thank you. Yeah, and when you get emails or the council gets emails, I see those emails too, and I take them seriously. Absolutely. So the emails you're referring to, I'm going to take a look at those because no, the owner's agent is the person who can receive notices, who has complete authority to deal with the building, but the responsibility under the ordinance for, having a working heater in the building, that's entirely the owner's. It's not the owner's agent. And I will take a look at the language that those emails highlighted. And if we need a clarification there, I'll bring it forward to you on third reading.
I appreciate that, City Attorney. That was going to be my next question, is if that merited an amendment, if we could see that coming forward for the third reading, just to try to make sure that as many amendments as are going to be required, we can deal with during this effort of the council. So I appreciate that. I'd also like to ask another question. I think you touched on this earlier, but I want some clarity on it, which is this issue of that's been raised from time to time throughout this discussion of due process. My understanding is if something's going to go before the municipal court of the city of Laramie, due process concerns are addressed there, and that's where those types of issues, perhaps around an opportunity to answer charges and so forth, are addressed as in our municipal court procedure, just like they would be any other matter brought before the municipal court. Am I right? And do we have our ordinance structured in that fashion? I believe you touched on this earlier, City Attorney, but I'd like you to review that again if you could.
It pains me to say it, but you're absolutely right, Your Honor. Yes, there is no more process, there is no more due process than due process in a court of law. It's every one of our ordinances, from speeding to, setbacks to this. The ultimate resolution of those, if they cannot be resolved, or people do not plead guilty to speeding, you go to court and you get a trial. And you call witnesses, and the city calls witnesses. The judge makes a decision. This is true for everything, this ordinance and all the others. And then you have the right to appeal if you're the defendant. So, absolutely, complete due process.
Thank you very much. I have one last question for you before I go to comment on this, which is been represented to the council that the decision from the district court voided this ordinance, and that's not my understanding. Is that your understanding as our city attorney?
It did not. The court found that the ordinance was not preempted by state statute. that the city was free to pass such an ordinance. Next, the court went to look at the procedural / enforcement parts of this ordinance and said it is vague and highlighted two things. Focused on, you talk about the order of the city manager in this ordinance. Is that what you would go to court on? And so that's point one. No, we're gonna make that more clear. It's not the order of the city manager that you go to court on. It would be the city's allegation at the end of all this that your rental unit does not meet this code. So that's number one. Number two, and as I said, while I respect Judge Griffin very much, she seemed confused about what kind of proceeding it would be in municipal court. And we're making it more clear. It's like every other proceeding. It's a criminal proceeding. And that sounds ominous to people, but that's what we have in municipal court. A speeding ticket is a criminal proceeding. It's a misdemeanor. And you move up from there. They're all criminal proceedings.
That would apply then, city attorney, to any of our code violations. Weeds overgrowing in a lot, not shoveling an icy sidewalk, etc. The city is limited in the type of ordinance violation it can bring to city court, and that's why it's set up that way. And you explained that, I believe, earlier.
Yes, that's exactly true. And now that you've given me the floor, I'll go on. The only other tool that the city would have, and it really doesn't apply to this rental ordinance, would be to seek an injunction, to seek an order from a court to make somebody comply with the city ordinance. That doesn't apply here. We're not seeking to make people comply. We're seeking, sad to say, but bluntly, to punish them if they don't. But in other situations, if people wanted to start digging up our water lines for some strange reason, we would have to go into district court to seek an injunction, a court order preventing them from digging up our water lines. But that's not this kind of ordinance.
I appreciate the further explanation. I think what the council is attempting to do here, and what we feel like we have a responsibility to do here, is to address as many of these questions as we can to try to achieve as much clarity as possible about what is and is not happening. So thank you for your time with that. Council, I'm going to go to public comment, and then I'll bring it back to council for another opportunity for a final comment or further discussion. And we'll go to public comment. We would like to recognize Brett Glass and let Mr. Glass into the meeting for comments. You have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. I've already said most of what I was intending to say, but I did want to recognize the comments of Mike Cisneros and of Councilor Schuster with regard to the issue of egress windows. In order to avoid these problems and to possibly do an amendment which Councilor O'Doherty talked about, which you may want to do, and this is something you can do, is since the purpose here is to amend the ordinance, is simply to specify an area and not specify a height. Since I've been talking to people who have windows that are of adequate area, but not 40, I think it was 40 or 44 inches above the floor, simply require them to provide some way to get to the window, like a step stool or something like that. That would probably handle most of these situations. But see if you can accommodate those situations where it is perfectly possible and safe to get out, but not require $7,000 worth of remodeling and excavation and destroying the wall. As I mentioned when the ordinance was first adopted, if you dig in the tree area, if you dig down to make a deeper pit for an egress window in certain places, you will literally be digging a well and you will flood your basement. There's no way that people can do this. But I have talked to a lot of mom and pops who are very concerned that they won't be able to rent. And I just want to point out that the mom and pops, unlike corporations that are building rental houses elsewhere, the moms and pops are your constituents. They are small businesses here in town. They're entrepreneurs. They're people who you should be encouraging, not trying to force out of business. But anyway, that's all I really need to say. My other comments regarding the issue of civil versus criminal proceedings and the fact that this criminalizes potentially issues that are in a civil should be part of a civil contract. Well, they still stand, but I don't know that this it may have to go to court before those are resolved if you pass this. Thank you.
Thank you for taking time to be at the council meeting and share your views. Council, it's back to you for questions or comments before we proceed to a vote on the amendment. We have some proposed amendments, I think, that we've discussed at length. Two that really come to mind. City Attorney, I would guess that the typical advice would be for council members that have particulars about that and about language and what will work with the ordinance should contact you between now and the third reading of this, probably the sooner the better, to try to get that language figured out. And then we'll proceed. Anything else? City Attorney? Yeah.
Yeah, I will add that there's two different kinds of things I feel the council has discussed tonight. The first arises from the few emails council received today or yesterday. That's something I can take a look at, and I'd welcome phone calls from council about that, just because I've got to make a judgment about whether something needs to be cleaned up there. The other topic, egress windows, obviously, quite obviously, that was not, I never looked at that, right? And that's a matter for people within the code department, within city staff, to shed their technical expertise on that. So I won't be able to address your technical questions about that. You might have to make other phone calls.
I appreciate that, City Attorney. Understood. And actually, given the nature of that, I'd like to ask the city manager, because I do think we've heard some discussion generated out of this and some possible approaches to this. City manager, what would your preference be for council members that are interested in pursuing that line of potential amendment, as this has been an area of interest in this since the passage of the original ordinance? Could you provide us some guidance for that?
Yes, Mayor, thank you. We will take a look at that. I'll work with the Assistant City Manager who oversees the Code Administration Office. We'll get you some feedback based on the meeting tonight and the public comments that you've heard. If you have any particular questions you'd like us to address that may be tangential to those things I just said, if you'll email those to myself and to Assistant City Manager Todd Caesar, we will get that ready for next reading.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. And that's what we'll do. City Clerk, can we have a roll call vote on this item?
Gabriel, absent. O'Doherty.
Yes.
Schmeckel.
Yes.
Schuster.
No.
Cumby.
Yes.
Harrington.
Yes.
Somerville.
Yes.
Pierce.
Yes.
Weaver.
Yes.
That's 7 yeses, 1 no, and 1 absent, Your Honor.
That motion carries. Thank you, City Clerk. Thank you, Council. That's going to take us to our next item. Item number 15, and I'd like to call on Vice Mayor Pierce.
Thank you, Mayor. I move that the City Council approve on second reading original ordinance number 2054, adding LMC Chapter 2.34 titled Laramie Urban Renewal Agency.
Second.
Second from Councilmember Harrington, motion and a second from Councilmember Harrington. To recognize Assistant City Manager Feaser for the background.
Honorable Mayor, City Council. First off, I want to thank City Manager Jordan and Planning Manager Taney for standing in my place at the first reading. Everything that they had said was accurate, and I very much appreciate being able to be off at that time. Since that time, city staff advertised and we held the public hearing tonight. And based on my review of the recording, came up with some responses to some of the areas that I thought were most important to be noted off of council's questions and questions from the community that we received. The first one being area of operation. The ordinance under consideration has a defined area of operation, which is the corporate limits. And if I remind you that we passed an initiative resolution that established the area of blight to be within the city's boundaries. With the city can operate outside of that distance. However, it would take the approval of the county commissioners through resolution. Staff's not recommending including unincorporated areas into the area of operation of the Urban Renewal Authority, and are specifically requesting that our area of operation resides within the city limits of the city of Laramie. The second one that I thought was the build of the Laramie URA board, how it's made up. The state statute provide guidance for that under 159134. The mayor, with consent of and advice of the local governing body, shall appoint a board of 5 commissioners selected on the basis of their qualifications and knowledge of community planning, urban renewal, and business management. Appointees must reside within the area of operation, which again we set as the city limits, and staff believes that the current policy for appointing board members and commission members by a majority vote of the city council meets the statutory requirements for the Laramie URA board. As of note, we do expect in January, if this is passed, to have a liaison, a council liaison, which would probably meet with 2 other council members to review applications and hopefully forward those names for approval by the entire city council on behalf of the mayor. The final one was the project plan and protection of public funds. Nancy, can you pull up the flow chart that I'd created in the cover sheet for me? I created a flow chart to kind of give you an idea of the amount of public meetings and public hearings that will be held in relationship to the project plan. State statute authorizes, we need to go down to the next page. Sorry, Nancy. Under this one, the state statute states that an urban renewal project shall not be planned or initiated unless the governing body by resolution has determined the specific area to be slum or blighted. Now, although we passed a resolution establishing blight within the city limits, there's going to be a resolution developed by city staff and presented to city council for ratification that denotes a specific area where the Urban Renewal Authority is going to invoke its powers. That comes to council to specify that it meets the definition of blight. When we did the initiative resolution, we also gave you the conditions of blight, and there were 9 conditions of blight, not necessarily just being a menace, but deterioration structures, failing road systems that don't handle the capacity, dangerous areas. There's an other, we don't use other as one of our criteria, but there were 9 criteria that actually denote blight. After that, the project plan, after the initial resolution, specific area blight is denoted, then a project plan may be developed through the work of a developer and the Laramie Urban Renewal Agency. And this is where that work will work. What's the project plan? What's going to happen? How does it meet the intent of the Urban Renewal Authority? How does it address our housing crisis or our rental housing crisis, low income, affordable housing? And what is the plan to use the Urban Renewal Authority to hopefully, in my vision, the most apropos use is tax increment financing. How will tax increments financing be used to assist the developer to make sure that it meets the intent of our housing crisis that we're currently within? Once finalized, that plan is forwarded to the, keep in mind all the Urban Renewal Agency meetings are open to the public, so that'll be at least 1 meeting or more meetings. Then once finalized, it's forwarded to the Planning Commission, where the Planning Commission hears the project plan. and they give either a recommendation to forward to council with a positive or to forward to council with a declining the project plan, but it still goes to council, and it's council must hear that within 30 days of receipt from the Laramie Planning Commission. City Council will hold a public hearing. Wyoming State Statute 159109. Once it's held, then the City Council may approve or deny an urban renewal project. If approved, the project plan must meet the requirements of 159110. And then if approved, it goes back to the Laramie Urban Renewal Agency, where they continue to work with the developer, approve the funding through the tax increment financing or what mode came through that plan, and then oversees the expenditure of the project to completion. That is correct that state statute doesn't give a sunset on any specific area. All the professionals recommend that you don't do an urban renewal project plan for more than 20 years. My intent, or I would hope that our intent, is to keep those around 15, maybe even less if we can. But the state statute doesn't currently require that. The other thing that we wouldn't want to do is we wouldn't want to sunset the Laramie Urban Renewal Agency, because if they have plans that go beyond the sunset date, then we'd have to renew the ordinance to put it back in place. I think with that, I feel like I stumbled through that and probably confused everybody very much so, but I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
For my part, Mr. Feaser, it seemed relatively clear. I wouldn't feel too bad about it. Councilmember Harrington.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Assistant City Manager, I think you did great. The flow chart specifically put some of my more significant reservations at ease. I had been pretty curious about how the council and the public would participate in the planning process earlier on, so that we aren't at a plat is submitted and then somebody gets to weigh in from the public. So knowing that the areas would be submitted to the council is helpful, and that there is some public oversight of that process. And then I had one question. I'm sort of missed what you were saying a little bit on the appointment process, and I was wondering if it's clear enough in this ordinance. Certainly we're not in a strong mayor form of government, so the mayor appointing members isn't necessarily in line with in my opinion, in line with our current process for selecting boards, committees, etc. So was curious if we needed to modify the language that says the mayor with, the advice and consent of council, if we needed to modify that to be more clear that it would be similar to the planning commission, where the liaison and two other members, and I would be fine with the mayor and two other members, but curious if we need to clarify that.
Honorable Mayor, through you to Councilor Harrington, we've discussed this with staff, and the way that we believe that it would work is we will have a liaison appointed to the Laramie Urban Renewal Agency. And as we accept applications, those applications are usually interviewed by 2 or a minimum of 3 council members to forward that name to the mayor. That comes to the mayor in the form of a resolution, and through consent of the entire council, they appoint those people to serve on the Laramie Urban Renewal Agency, if I track it right that way. I believe state statute says the mayor with consent of the city council. And that's the important part, is I believe the mayor, through the resolution, is the signatory. So that's what it's stating, but it's not valid unless council has approved that, the way that I read the ordinance. Of course, I'm not an attorney. I just stayed at a Holiday Inn a couple weeks ago.
All right. Next question, Councilmember Schuster.
Thank you very much. One of the areas we have talked about is our own property, and I know this has been brought up. It's our former place of service where we kept equipment, stuff like that, 4th and Canby through 4th and Shields, and I just want to get everything in order. So the first thing we would say is the the building at 4th and Canby is in terrible shape. I've had several students that have went and worked there and told me about that building, and I know. So what would be the role? We want to call that a blighted area. Are we then going to hire a contractor to tear that down, level it off so it's good, clean ground, and then see if we can find a developer that wants to invest in that property? Or, I mean, so the city would be on the hook just for tearing it down and prepping the ground. And then as a urban blighted area, where do we go from there? I just want to try to take that property right there through the steps.
Honorable Mayor, through you to Councilor Schuster. First off, the development of this URA is not really specific to any city property. It's actually specific to the council goals that were brought up, that were developed in January, February last year. That property is one that we have done extensive discussions about as far as the URA is concerned. I'm not 100% sure that the Urban Renewal Agency will function on that property, to tell you the truth. In that particular instance, we own the land. And so we really control our own destiny on what may happen there. Now, do I see where the Urban Renewal Agency and tax increment financing could be helpful in us addressing some of the flooding issues that affect that area, or assisting a developer as they try to bring that area out of the use that it is, whether it's if we do environmental assessment phase ones and we find something, could we use urban renewal funds or tax increment financing to help offset any contamination that might have happened? Absolutely. As far as that property is concerned, my vision, and my visions are sometimes a little bit off, but I envision that we're going to put out an RFP to try to secure a development idea and a developer that meets the housing criteria or whatever, whether it's mixed use or housing over residential or mixed use, what kind of housing solution it is to the crisis we're in, and bring them in. And then we'll work with that developer to see if we actually want to go through the Urban Renewal Authority area, or is it a matter of using incentives because we own the land to get that done. I'm not 100% sure that because we own the land that urban renewal is going to be the ticket on that piece. It may be, it may not. I hope that helps.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Somerville.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to touch on Councilor Harrington's comment real briefly in terms of how to ensure that there's, 3 council members that do an interview. When we add that to our boards and commission lists, I believe like the Planning Commission and the Parks and Rec Committee, in our council code of conduct, it specifies that 3 council members must interview for those 2 boards. I think it would be as simple as adding the Urban Renewal Agency in a quick amendment to our council code of conduct to ensure that process move forward.
Thank you.
Councilmember O'Doherty.
I just want to point out to the public, because we've gotten comments about that 5-mile business, that there's no 5 miles there. I mean, Mr. Feaser addressed it, but the very first whereas in the ordinance says execute authority, begin the process of urban renewal within its boundaries. So I just want to point that out, because we got some letters where people think that we're reaching out into the county, and it's the very first whereas. Thank you.
Thank you. Other questions or comments? Public comment on this item. Public comment on this item is open. I'm sorry. Let me be more clear. Yes, let's recognize Tom Matamore. Mr. Matamore, thank you for your patience and sticking with us till we get to the item again. You have the floor.
There we go. I am still opposed to it on general principles, but I am very pleased with the whereases, as I think some of the other things I've been working on for the city lately would be greatly hampered if they wasn't for the whereases. So thanks to Todd Feaser for doing that. And hopefully this will work out. I think everybody's got good intentions on it, and we'll see how it goes. Thank you very much for your time, Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Matamore, and for your continued interest in city things that we're doing and your service on our Planning and Zoning Commission. Public comment is open. Seeing no further requests for public comment, we'll close the public comment. Council, take it back to you. Council, I'll briefly say that I think consideration of a URA or an urban renewal agency under state statute is something the city has been researching and considering for about 6 years now, if not longer. I recall one of the first discussions about it that in-depth discussions about it that I was part of occurred back in 2016, later in the year in 2016. I'm glad that we clarified a couple of things about the issue of the county and the fact that were there to be a URA project in the county, it would have to come with the approval of the county commissioners and would likely be subjected to the exact same kind of procedural process that the assistant city manager outlined for us. My assumption would be they would follow a very similar, if not exactly similar process in terms of public hearings. I'm not sure if the statute, assistant city manager clarifies this, but even through their own planning and zoning or some process that would be very similar, replicate the same steps, so it wouldn't be anything different. And most importantly, anything the city would want to try to do would, in partnership with the county, would of course have to be done with the approval of the county commissioners and any other steps in their process. Something that occurs to me, council members, about this is that probably the only way to address some of the hypothetical concerns that we might have about this is to see this process in action and to make sure that it's done correctly and in a way that's sensitive to the concerns that we've heard, which I think are not without merit, and to make sure that process is open and accessible and provides all those opportunities for input, careful consideration, and understanding that we'd want to have with any kind of large-scale project. And that may be the only way that some of these serious concerns can be addressed. And given what we've seen and how it's going to be set up, I think that's possible. I don't think we should be in any big rush until we know all the ins and outs and wheres and whys of this, but I do think in the future that this could prove to be a very useful tool for the city of Laramie, as it has proved to be for other municipalities in Wyoming. And so I'm going to support this. And I think we'll see some of those things unfold, because I think we'll take that need to be really cautious and deliberate and open about every step of the process very seriously when we have a project in the future if this passes. Councilmember O'Doherty.
I had a question, like, is there a way that we could, how does it get dissolved if the council decides to dissolve it in the future? Did I overlook that? I see that we're not going to just have it automatically sunset, but is there a way to just say, yeah, seemed like a good idea, but it's not working? We can, is that just a matter of passing another ordinance? Thank you.
Honorable Mayor, through you, Councilor Doherty, that the state statute does allow for it's dissolved at, let me get it open. It's the very last page of the ordinance. Of the state statutes.
It's in the ordinance, sorry.
It's actually in the state statute. It basically, I know I've read it, state statute states that it can be removed by repealing the ordinance or a new ordinance, striking it from the municipal code. The one thing that'll be hard to do is if we have project plans in place that are funded beyond when we close it, how does it continue to get the project get overseen and the release of the payments goes? And that's what I'm not sure of, but it'll be something that if we do ever get into that position, that we'd work with our sitting attorney and figure out how that's going to move forward.
Councilmember O'Doherty, any follow-up there?
Yeah, I just wanted to say it is this last paragraph. I was looking at whereases, but I forgot about this part. So as long as there's no indebtedness, and obviously if there was some project going on, you couldn't dissolve it. But if there was nothing going on and no indebtedness, it looks like it's simply passing an ordinance. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Councilor Doherty. It was the last paragraph of the ordinance.
Any other questions or comments before we vote? I want to thank staff for the follow-up on the questions that were raised in the previous meetings and the really thorough effort to address all those things. And I think that's just going to be the way this goes moving forward is just that careful and deliberate process to make sure folks understand what's going on and can have a good expectation about how it's going to play out and be utilized as a tool here in Laramie like it is in other parts of the state. So I want to thank you for that. We'll keep working on it. Seeing no other comments or questions, I'm going to ask the city clerk to have a roll call.
Somerville,
Yes.
Schuster,
Yes.
Schmeckel,
Yes.
O'Doherty,
Yes.
Harrington,
Yes.
Gabriel, absent, Cumby,
Yes.
Pierce,
Yes.
Weaver.
Yes.
That's 8 yeses, 0 nos, and 1 absent, Your Honor.
Thank you. And that motion carries. Thank you, council. Thank you, city clerk. Okay. That's going to take us now to public comments on non-agenda items. If we have any. I want to thank members of the public for their time and commitment to council meetings and asking questions, participating through Zoom. Seeing none, we'll close the public comment period and we'll move to our next item for discussion. Consideration of future work session topics, and I would also add upcoming meetings to that. Any discussion there? Council, you'll note that the December schedule is only 3 meetings at this time, and the staff has felt pretty confident moving forward that those 3 meetings will be enough to get us through our business as the current council to the end of the year. I did have one question about that, which is certainly open for a little bit of discussion, which is that do we anticipate a need for a formal meeting of the outgoing council for the first meeting in January, or will the meeting in December in fact be the final meeting of the outgoing council?
Mayor, typically the outgoing and the incoming will both meet on January 3rd to conclude any final business that the outgoing council had and then kind of turn it over. That's how it's been since I've been here, Mayor.
I appreciate that, City Clerk, and of course, you know, I've raised that question for a reason, because this has been something that has occurred to me. Certainly, I think that's been the practice of the council for the last couple of years, but in years prior, that hasn't been the case, and there is something of an issue with the actual expiration of council terms being December 31st, and outgoing council members participating in a meeting and potentially being paid for that meeting at the first meeting in January, because we're no longer sitting council members. City manager, you may recall, you and I discussed this just in passing. Do we have any concern about that? And is there, in fact, a need probably for the council to revert back to the older practice of making sure that everything is wrapped up at that final meeting at the end of the year? Do we have any concerns there? Council members or staff? All right, so I guess council, I'm looking for guidance from you on that topic then, about what we'd like to do. Do Do we want to have the goodbyes and the thank yous on December 20th? Or do you have a desire to do that with your incoming council members? Councilmember Somerville.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to share, I share your recollection that I think we had this discussion, and that we're not supposed to be having the new and the outgoing council meet on the same day. So I would advise that we do not do that, and adjust the schedule accordingly.
Thank you, Councilmember Somerville. That is my position as well. Council members, does anybody else have any particular concern about that? Otherwise, I think it's going to be my request that this council have its business finalized for December 20th, as long as the staff can accommodate it and doesn't create a burden. City manager, I want to make that clear as well. If there's a need for some reason for the rollover, obviously the council wants to work with the staff. Councilmember Schuster.
I'm not sure what you're wanting to do, but since I have been on council, the outgoing council appeared in the first meeting in January, and if there was something left on its third vote or something like that, they have voted on up to 2 or 3 things, and then they're usually given a plaque and told goodbye. But whatever council decides, they decide. But it's council's choice. I know it's really different right now because people aren't going to be, I'm guessing, aren't going to be sworn into oath in this chambers. I'm guessing they're going to do it on Zoom. So I'm just not sure what's going to happen there. This is a completely different council than I've ever seen, and I understand why. But this has been completely different in all my years of service here. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Schuster. And yes, there seems to be some kind of conflicting recollection because some of those of you that were on the council with myself in the 2013 to 2016 can probably recall having done it both ways. But it recently occurred to me, and I verified that there is a bit of an issue of council members with expired terms voting on anything. I think we should avoid that. And also, if you recall from our earlier discussion just a little bit ago, a month or so, 2 months ago, the new council may very much want to take a different direction in the meeting format, and it would be good for them, I think, and I'll leave that to those of you that'll be returning here to help me with this, but I think it would be good to have our business concluded prior to that new council coming in, so you all can discuss with yourselves and the staff what kind of meeting format you want to have. Does that seem reasonable? Does this line of thinking track with everyone? So if there isn't going to be concern, city manager and city clerk, I think that we wanted to touch on this and give you guys plenty of time and make sure that that final meeting in December would be the final meeting of your outgoing council ending in 22. And I hope that makes sense and we can get that done. I also don't want to add any pressure. Oh, hurry up. And, you know, if there's anything we have to do, if it's going to be able to go smoothly, I think because of the potential for a different meeting format to be implemented by the next council, we just wanted to see if we could have a clean end to the old council, so to speak, and the new council have some flexibility deciding what direction they wanted to go. Vice Mayor.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I think I believe since I've been on council, and it's only been 10 years, but I think we've done both over the years. So I think. So anyway, like I said, I think we've done both. I also believe we don't have anything scheduled for the 27th of December, correct?
Correct.
So if for some very strange and unusual situation where we absolutely had to meet on the 27th, and let's hope that's not the case, we could certainly do that to finish business if we had to, and I'm assuming we might have one staff person around, but and maybe a quorum, I don't know. But there is that option. So
that's a good point, Vice Mayor. Yeah, that's a really good point. And I'll keep calling on council members, but I do want to check with the city clerk. City clerk, you don't have any anxiety about the council's discussion here in terms of, because you do so much in terms of helping us manage the calendar. Given that we would have a potential to meet on the 27th if something came up, do you think we'd be able to finalize this council's end of the year business by that meeting of the 20th without any, keeping in mind that if something does come up, we do have that date of the 27th. Is that going to work from your office's perspective?
Mayor, I don't see any conflicts from our office. And if a meeting were to be called on the 27th, due to that being canceled in resolution 2022-66, it would just have to be a special meeting. But we could certainly accommodate that if it needed to happen.
All right. I just wanted to make sure that this wasn't a line of discussion or decision that was going to cause your office problems. Because again, we do know how much of our calendar management is frankly done by yourself in your office. Councilor O'Doherty, sorry.
Yeah, having read the Christmas Carol every year for 20 years or so, I just think, we could give an extra piece of coal or something to what other staff member wants to help out on that day, but let's not do it. Let's not do it. Thanks.
Yeah. Only in case of emergency do we break out the coal. City manager, I think you indicated earlier, this is no problem and you're happy to do that. If there's anything out of your office that's needed, we can probably accommodate it by the 20th. All right, I wanted to cover that, council. Thanks for your patience with that. I hope that makes sense to everybody. Really, from my perspective, it's about the new council being able to decide which direction they want to go at that time and have a little bit of lead into that. So it's not, what kind of meeting and where are we going to get sworn in and how are we going to do this? And you folks can work that out with your incoming council. All right, I appreciate that. Councilmember Schuster, for the second to very last time, I'll call on you for item number 18.
Thank you. I wish the council to adjourn to executive session regarding personnel and privileged information, Wyoming State Statute 16-4-405A, Roman numeral 10, Wyoming State Statute 16-4-405, small letter A, Roman numeral 9.
Second.
Okay. A motion and a second. All those in favor say aye or raise your hands.
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Same sign. All right, good. So we're going to adjourn to exec session. I think the city clerk usually needs about 10 minutes or so to get ready for that. There's an item where we're going to have everybody, and then we'll have some breakouts for personnel discussion after that. So I'll see you there in about 10 minutes. Okay, everyone?